Sisters and brothers, it gives me great pleasure to bring to the stage the American Federation of Teachers President, Randi Weingarten.
Am I tall now? So thank you, Tony, for those really kind words. And thank you to our American Federation of Teachers family in the Pacific Northwest for the warm welcome, and I really mean warm welcome, that you have given us. And to our hosts, Sandra Schrader and Marlene Martin, I cannot thank you enough. And although I haven't seen them in the audience right now, I know Edie Shanker, Eddie McElroy, and Nat LaCour are with us today, and thank you as well. It is a pleasure that they are here. And speaking of pleasure, brothers and sisters, what a pleasure it is to be with all of you in Seattle, far from the other Washington. But I'd ask you to excuse me from dispensing with any more of what are necessary niceties, because it's been a pretty tough 2 years, tougher than I've ever seen. 2 years ago, I stood before you, honored, humbled, and hopeful. I still am. Since you elected me president, I've made more than 150 trips to 31 states, visiting members in 73 different cities and towns. And I've returned from each visit, and Tony and Loretta, my partners in this endeavor, will tell you, I've returned from each visit in awe of the work you do every day. I remain deeply honored to lead our union. And I'm humbled by the contributions you make on a daily basis. Those of you who have made America's institution of higher education the envy of the world. Those of you who keep our health system strong. The public employees who ensure that vital government services reach those who depend on them. And the teachers, early childhood educators, and PSRPs who educate and inspire America's nearly 50 million public school students. And I remain hopeful that we can overcome the formidable obstacles before us. An economy that has battered families and state budgets, an energized and concerted movement to tear down our public institutions, and a growing pundit class that has engaged in the browbeating of unionized teachers and public schools. In other words, a fixing blame rather than fixing schools. Now, we're doing our part to make things better. We've been proactive and innovative, flexible and cooperative with our partners in school districts and in the federal government. We've lived up to our responsibility, and we ask others to do the same. And when there has been problems, we've sought common ground to solve them. I stand before you today, sure, in the knowledge that we have examined our policies, looked at our practices, and made changes when we've needed to change. That has sometimes been hard, but it gives us the needed credibility to hold a mirror up to others. But frankly, I am shaken to the core. In fact, I am horrified by the immense threats to public services, particularly public education, that exists in the corridors of power in this country. And I suspect many of you in this hall feel the same way. I never thought I'd see the superintendent of a major city's public school system call public education, and I'm quoting here, crappy. I never thought I'd open a major newspaper to see us described as, and I'm quoting again, self-interested adults trying to deny poor parents choice for their children. I might have expected to hear the House Republican leaders say that preventing teacher layoffs is a scheme to pad the education bureaucracy, but I never thought I would see a Democratic president whom we helped elect and his education secretary applaud the mass firing of 89 teachers and other staff in Central Falls, Rhode Island, when not a single one of the teachers ever received an unsatisfactory evaluation. Where are our Central Falls folks? Let them stand up and be recognized. And I never thought I'd see a documentary film about helping disadvantaged children being lauded when the villain in this film isn't crumbling schools or grinding poverty or the lack of a curriculum or overcrowded classrooms or the total failure of No Child Left Behind. No, the villain was us. Now look, I can take it. It's part of my job. And remember, I'm from New York. But taking abuse should not be in the job description of more than 3 million public school teachers who work hard every day to do right by their students. Brothers and sisters, never before have I seen such attacks on public employees, teachers, and the unions that represent them. Never before have I seen so few attack so many, so harshly, for doing so much, often with so little. Now, I don't know if I should call the people attacking us reformers, as they like to be known, or performers, which might be more accurate, because many of them seem more interested in engaging in political theater than constructive conversation. So, I'll just call them the blame the teacher crowd. And even though many of them have set their sights on all public institutions, I will focus on the institution that has gotten the most abuse, public education. Now, the blame the teacher crowd would have Americans believe that there is only one choice when it comes to public education. Either you're for students or you're for teachers. That is a bogus choice. When a school is good for kids, it's also good for teachers. And if our leaders fail to recognize this and fail to create a positive vision for our schools, we, my friends, must lead the way. I know of no other institution that has lifted up so many, so advanced our democratic principles, and has instilled in all of us something beyond the 3 R's: a limitless sense of possibility. That sense of possibility is under assault as never before. Public education is facing a perfect storm so severe that even some of our allies are seeking refuge in cheap and easy approaches. For starters, we are still reeling from the effects of the worst recession since the Great Depression. We appreciate that in last year's stimulus bill, Congress and the administration created a $100 billion investment which blunted the crippling cuts that were looming last year. And you saw that. In K-12 education, the stabilization fund kept the worst effects of the recession from playing out in our children's classrooms. The investment in Pell Grants kept students in college. The investment in FMAP allowed public hospitals to stay open and public services to continue. But even with last year's help, this year's outlook is bleak. And that is despite, and you saw some of it on the video, that is despite the Herculean efforts of AFT members like you and the efforts of members of Congress who were working as late as last week to find the funds to mitigate the continued devastation from state and local government cuts. We are grateful to the House of Representatives for once again leading the way, and to Chairman Obey and to Speaker Pelosi in particular. But look at what's happening. Already more than 120 school districts across the country have shortened the school week to just 4 days. Higher education has been hit hard too. At the University of California, at the same time as tuition increased a staggering 32%, our affiliate reports that 10% of the contingent faculty members were either laid off or not renewed. And the chancellor of the California Community Colleges estimates that 140,000 students were turned away from the system's 112 campuses last year. Others are solving the budget crisis by cutting art, music, physical education, slashing pre-kindergarten programs, and help for students who fall behind. Many of you have taken furlough days, both to prevent the interruption to core services that so many depend on and to save a colleague's job. Many of you have agreed to other cost savings in pensions and benefits, salary freezes, increases into class size, and other shared services. I honor all of you who have walked that walk. But after all the personnel cuts, after all the rifts, after all the buyouts, who is left to deal with the recession's consequences in the classroom? The individual teacher. Of course, we're far from the only ones feeling the impact of the recession on our schools. A study conducted by the Foundation for Child Development found that the current recession will effectively wipe out 35 years of social progress in combating poverty. That's more families that will need the health care and public services you provide. That's more kids showing up to school cold or sick, homeless or hungry. So one front of this perfect storm is the rocky economy. The second is that as much as we wish it were not true, out-of-school factors really affect kids. Whether it is something systemic like poverty, or a stressful experience like a death in a family, or losing one's home, or a parent losing a job, these factors matter. They matter a lot. Out-of-school factors are responsible for more than half the achievement gap. And you know that when budgets are cut, school counselors, programs to help struggling students, and the very supports that help kids overcome barriers to success, those are the first to go. Now, when we point out these inconvenient truths, it's more likely that people confront us rather than join us in confronting the problem. When we speak the truth, they accuse us of looking for excuses. Once again, who gets blamed? The individual teacher. A third truth is that the world is changing. Yes, today's students need a strong foundation in the basics, but they need much, much more. They need to be able to engage in the creative problem solving and innovative thinking that are essential to success in today's economy. True education success isn't just a test score, just as economic success isn't just GDP growth. And it is also not simply knowledge or math or the ability to read. Education should be about developing young people who are informed, engaged, and enlightened. That takes a lot. And again, who do we ask to do it? The individual teacher. So, my friends, we are caught in this vortex with recessionary forces, socioeconomic forces, and global economic forces swirling around. And what does the blame the teacher crowd say? If only there were fewer bad teachers, all would be right in the world. Now, no teacher, myself included, wants a bad teacher in any classroom. And the AFT and our locals are taking steps to solve the problem and to strengthen teaching. But equally, if not more important, we don't want good teachers, the vast majority of teachers in this country, driven from the classroom by a lack of support or just plain weariness for being responsible for everything. It is simply wrong to suggest there is an epidemic of bad teachers and at the same time ignore poverty, budget cuts, the absence of curriculum, the attrition of good teachers, all the things we know truly hamper student success. Blaming individual teachers may please deficit hawks because it is cheap. But in reality, it is a cheap shot masquerading as a strategy. When we gathered at our last convention, I spoke about strengthening public institutions. Today, sadly, we're called upon to do something even more fundamental, even more vital. As Bob Herbert recently wrote in the New York Times, and I quote, "We've become a nation that is good at destroying things, with wars overseas, self-destructive policies here at home. But that has lost sight of how to build and maintain a flourishing society. We're dismantling our public education system and, incredibly, attacking our spectacularly successful system of higher education, which is the finest in the world. And although we can't do it alone, we must do nothing less than save our public institutions. That begins by working in common cause to save public education. But our job is more than simply fighting for resources or saving public education as it is today, or even as we have known it in the past. We are going to lead the fight to save public education as we know it ought to be. That is our goal, that is our charge, and that will be our legacy. Now, just as teachers can't educate a generation of students alone. We can't create a new, better system of public education alone. But if we don't lead this charge, who will? And if not now, then when? So here's our vision. Our vision is that every neighborhood school should be an excellent school that all families know they can count on every year for all of their children. Our vision is to build on what works and replicate it for all kids, in all schools, in all communities. Our vision is of schools where good teachers can meet together to meet each child's individual needs, where students develop their unique talents through a well-rounded curriculum, where every child has the support they need to reach their full potential. Our vision is for teachers to get the support to constantly improve in an environment in which students have what they need to succeed. And what is their vision? Constantly hiring tens and thousands of new teachers, leaving them to sink or swim, and then losing many of them within the first 3 years, shutting down schools, firing all the teachers, particularly if they're veterans, and relocating kids regardless of how it affects them or their neighborhoods. Constantly opening new charter schools and hoping that the success of the few will somehow rub off on the many. Now, while there are some who seem opposed to our efforts on principle, many others want the same things that we do. They want what's best for the kids of this country, and they can't understand why it's not happening. So I don't hold it against people of goodwill who are just finding ways to help our kids. We will work with anyone who opens us an open door and an open mind. But bottom line, we're not going to just stand still and be a punching bag. We're not going to be bullied into silence. And we're not going to wait and oppose. We are going to lead and propose. That's why we're launching here and now a full-on campaign in support of public education as it ought to be. We're going to do what we do best, fight hard and fight smart. We're going to fight on behalf of all children, no matter where they live or their economic or social status. We're going to educate, agitate, and mobilize. We're going to hold up what works and call out what doesn't. Starting next month, we're going to take our message across the country to our locals and our schools and our communities, right into the heart of neighborhoods we serve, meeting parents and residents where they live, working in common cause with community towards our shared goals and aspirations, building futures together. The AFT and the labor movement in general have a well-deserved reputation for having political and legislative clout. But what some people don't understand is that clout has always stemmed from our connection to average working people and their connection to the vision that our movement made real: a fairer society where people had voice in the workplace, retirement security, a wage that allowed them to provide for their families, and where job security was respected, not reviled. That connection is being frayed by the economic upheaval that's affecting all of us. The great irony is that the very movement, organized labor, that is largely responsible for elevating millions of workers and their families into the middle class, that has provided a counterweight to the exploitative and arbitrary practices of government and corporations, the movement that has won a measure of economic stability and protection for all workers, not just our members, is now under assault for doing the very job it was conceived to do. What a sad commentary that these hard-fought, noble achievements now are seen as things that separate us from our communities rather than connect us together. We, my friends, must work to change this. Now, one way we do that is by organizing, bringing the benefits of AFT membership to more people. And since we last met, we've won 85 organizing victories across all constituencies, and we have chartered more than 53 new AFT locals. We've organized everyone from maintenance workers in California to hospital techs in Connecticut to university professors in Montana, everyone from lifeguards to librarians in New York. They aren't in the same local, by the way. Nurses in New Jersey, and yes, charter school teachers in Illinois, California, Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania. 150 charter schools where educators now have a voice. But at a time when the labor movement represents only 7% of working Americans, organizing is not enough. We don't want to be perceived as islands of privilege. We must be beacons of what's possible. We can't just lean on our political power. We must be fully embedded parts of our communities. And that, too, is what we are launching at this convention. It starts with putting a face on our members. The Montana Works That Matters campaign, spearheaded by our brothers and sisters in the MEA, MFT, does exactly that. It demonstrates that services that are sometimes invisible are actually indispensable. And then there's our sisters and brothers at John Dempsey Hospital in Connecticut, who led a fight to keep open a public hospital that the community really needed. Our local wasn't just fighting to save jobs, but to save critical services for the community. And then there's the AFTs, and you see us wearing the pink hearts. The AFT's Pink Hearts, Not Pink Slips campaign, which was started by parents in San Francisco who wanted to put a face on the impact that budget cuts would have on children and educators. Connecting with community means reminding people that we need their support and that they need our support. And it means reminding ourselves, particularly in tough economic times, that we have a responsibility to join with communities to strengthen the institutions in which we work and upon which they depend. But the words in this hall will mean nothing if not translated into action. And that's why I'm pleased to announce that this week, affiliates in 9 states have already signed on to build their community outreach programs. But more is needed. That's why we're calling on all of our 3,300 locals across this country to start this campaign with a day of action where we link arms with our community partners to highlight what we need to do together to fight for public services, to fight for our universities, to fight for our healthcare systems, and to fight for public education. And we're calling this campaign initially Raise Your Hand. Right now it says raise your hand for public schools, but it's raise your hand for public institutions, for our universities, for our health systems, and for our public schools. And we'll have a lot more to say about it on Saturday. But that's also why this October we will march on Washington. The AFT AFT will be a full partner in the One Nation March on Washington being organized by a broad range of civil rights, labor, faith, youth, and other progressive organizations. The march will highlight the need, as Ben Jealous talked about, the need for an America that focuses on good jobs, good public education, being good stewards of our environment, and immigration reform. In other words, building futures together. Now, as you say, we'll be fighting hard, but we also must fight smart. The AFT, as we have always done, will find what works and build on it, and at the same time invest in promising new ideas. Many of you remember, Al Shanker always said, "You can't fight something with nothing." So our view is we should ask the educators, which is what we've done. Since we last met, we've created the AFT Innovation Fund to support our members' bold ideas for improving public education. The fund, which is also supported by private foundations, is providing grants to 7 AFT affiliates nationwide. To give one example, a grant we made in Philadelphia last year is expanding a successful community schools program so it can reach an additional 4,000 students. Philadelphia is in the house. The second round of Innovation Fund grants will be announced later in this convention. But this unique, union-led fund respects, reflects, and advances the wisdom of educator ideas. Fighting smart also means constantly searching for solutions we believe will work, even if those solutions force us to think out of the box or initially make us feel uncomfortable. But let's be clear, taking responsibility does not excuse others' irresponsibility. But take responsibility we must. And in these 2 years of traveling the country and looking at the nations that outcompete us, it has become plain as day what the foundations are upon which we can build a system of public education as it ought to be. That is, of course, if we want to ensure that all kids are treated equitably and have the resources they need, regardless of where they live. What are these? Good teaching supported by good leaders. Curriculum and conditions that promote learning and provide kids the opportunity to learn. And 3, shared responsibility and mutual accountability. And this is what I mean by each. Good teaching is central to public education. Yet much of the talk about teacher quality these days seems to assume that teachers enter our profession as either good or bad, and that they stay that way. The truth is that great teaching is much more of a learned skill than it is innate, and all of us who have taught know this. And yet, until now, none of the powers that be have taken responsibility to systematically make great teaching a reality for all kids in all schools, in all communities. Evaluation should be a milepost and a path forward, but right now it's neither. It's an ill-suited proxy for where teachers stand and an underutilized tool to help them move forward. And rather than reforming evaluation, the blame the teacher crowd wants to use it as a hammer to pound individual teachers for everything that happens in a child's life. Although it would have been easier for us to simply criticize, we did much more. We tapped AFT rank-and-file leaders from across our nation who worked for 6 months with leading educational researchers to develop a real teacher development and evaluation system, one that embeds support and leads to continuous improvement rather than one that is subject to impressions, politics, and favoritism. It involves rigorous reviews by trained expert and peer evaluators. It's based on professional teaching standards, best practices, and student learning. Yes, real student learning, not the way the blame the teacher crowd wants. There is a huge difference. Let me say this again. There is a huge difference between using multiple indicators of student learning as a part of teachers' development and evaluation, and conversely, requiring that students' standardized test scores essentially dictate a teacher's hiring, firing, and promotion. The first is a process we should be part of. The second is something we must fight against. We teach kids. We should be assessing whether or not they're learning, but we're going to do it the right way. We also believe that students need a great curriculum delivered within an environment that eliminates barriers to student success. There's no way that our students can become the thinkers, innovators, and leaders of tomorrow if they have exclusively been taught only the subjects tested. All students need rich, well-rounded curricula that is grounded in areas ranging from foreign languages to physical education, civics to the sciences, history to health, as well as literature, mathematics, and the arts. Right now, those curricula aren't routinely in place, and a lot of teachers are forced to make it up every single day. Now, when I say this to outside audiences, people look at me like I'm crazy. What do you mean teachers don't have the tools to teach? What do you mean they don't have a scope and sequence of what should be taught? That's like asking members of an orchestra to play a symphony without sheet music. And despite the fact that Diane Ravitch and others have been calling for this for years, this is an area where the blame the teacher crowd has been totally silent. And that silence extends to the outrage that just happened in Texas, where the state school board tried to keep teachers from referring to the slave trade. But they're pretty loud when they talk about other countries outpacing us. So, if we want to be number one in the world, doesn't it make sense to look at what number one is doing? And number one today is Finland. And I know we have some representatives from Finland here from part of our international delegation. 90% of Finnish students complete the equivalent of high school, and 2/3 of them go on to post-secondary education. What are they doing right? They're investing in teachers. Every teacher receives high-quality graduate preparation at state expense. They've overhauled the curriculum, and they have rigorous national standards. They keep class sizes small. They make sure students get a good meal each day and access to health services. They treat teachers not as the technicians whose work is to implement strictly dictated syllabi, but rather as professionals who know how to improve learning for all. The result? In 3 decades, on international assessments, Finland has moved from subpar to a world leader. Oh, one more thing. They're virtually 100% union. no reason we can't provide an environment that eliminates barriers to student success. There's been a lot of attention focused recently on small islands of success, certain charter schools that benefit from huge amounts of outside funding, much of which goes to fund intensive cradle-to-college wraparound services, such as after-school, extended day, nutrition, health, and early childhood programs. Now, many of these are fine schools, but they are the educational equivalent of boutiques, fashionable, limited editions, and in the main, selective in their enrollment. Boutique schools, by definition, can never be the answer. Of course, the blame the teacher crowd disagrees. Their theory goes something like this. If these supposedly standout schools can do it, why can't others? Alternatively, we've heard it like this, and I quote, "These schools provide competition in and of itself, and that competition will create such pressure on the system that we will see dramatic change." Okay, they've had 20 years to prove their theory, and what have the results been? Last year, the largest national study of charter schools to date found that the vast majority achieve results that are worse than or equal to comparable traditional public schools. A second study, released just last week by Mathematica and the United States Department of Education, reinforced these findings. And there is no evidence to support the frequent claim that the success of some charters have to do with their being non-union. There is no school in America so good that it couldn't be even better if educators had a voice. But there is a lot of evidence that some of these things that these schools have do work, such as required parental engagement and environments that are conducive to teaching and learning and that help combat outside challenges like poverty, poor health, hunger, and family instability. Those services work just as well for neighborhood public schools as they do for celebrated charter schools. I've seen the role they've played in strengthening schools, like at the John A. Johnson Elementary School in St. Paul, Minnesota. Minnesota's in the house. Johnson is a community school that gets the important pieces in place and lined up. Great teachers and staff, strong curricula, fun and engaging activities for summer and after school, and an amazing array of services that remove barriers to success for kids and their families. These things make a huge, huge difference. And even knowing all of this, that a path to creating great teaching is essential, that a way to embed good curriculum is essential, that providing sufficient wraparound services to eliminate barriers to success is essential. Even with all of this, the blame the teacher crowd wants the public to believe instead that it just takes an iconic principal, an iconic teacher. Get rid of everything else and everyone else, and it will all work out. Well, they can keep waiting on that next superhero to change everything. But I've found the people I know we need, and I'm looking at them right now. A whole union full of hardworking educators, healthcare providers, professors, PSRPs who are doing extraordinary work for all children every day. Thank you very much. The third foundation, not done yet. I just want you to clap for yourselves. The third foundation for success is true accountability. Accountability that is meant to fix schools, not affix blame. Accountability that takes into account the conditions that are beyond the teacher or the school's control, and accountability that holds everyone responsible for doing their share. As I said at the outset, we take our responsibility and we are asking others to do the same. Principals, administrators, policymakers, all these people have a role to play as well. Should administrators be evaluated on creating schools with teaching and learning conditions that help retain teachers? Of course they should. High staff turnover is a huge problem. It's costly and counterproductive to hire thousands of well-qualified people every year, wish them luck, instead of providing them the support and tools they need to succeed, and then watch as more than 1 out of every 3 of them leave by the end of the 3rd year, and half leave within 5 years. That's bad for schools, and it's even worse for kids. We know that schools excel when all the adults in a school, teachers, parents, administrators, work together as a team with a laser-like focus on student achievement and social development, which is exactly what I saw in the amazing turnaround underway at the Ernie Pyle School I recently visited in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Shouldn't an accountability system give credit for this kind of teamwork? If the federal government can find ways to hold teachers individually responsible for the standardized test scores of their students, surely they can find ways to hold responsible our administrators and others who make the decisions and hold the purse strings. That's why we propose broadening accountability, not simply to make it top to bottom, but to make it bottom to top in our ESEA recommendations to Congress. And shared responsibility should extend to the bargaining table. These days, when we sit down at the negotiating table, we're often being met by district representatives who believe that collaboration is a waste of time and that Race to the Top and other administration initiatives give them the right to undercut collective bargaining. We're often faced with the uninformed attitude that collective bargaining contracts themselves are the obstacles to making schools better, rather than the understanding that collective bargaining is a process where our voices together help make schools and other public services and our communities better. But despite this attitude, we've been able to increasingly use collective bargaining as a tool to codify collaborative approaches that improve teaching and learning. We've seen this across America. Pittsburgh, New Haven, Douglas County, St. Paul, Philadelphia, and just this week, Cleveland. Now, we're never going to end up with a contract we would have gotten if we were on both sides of the table. But I'm proud that in local after local, in some of the worst economic times any of us have ever seen, we've been able to use this process as a way to give teachers a voice, not just for themselves, but for their students and their schools. In putting forward these ideas, we're not waiting for other people to tell us what needs to happen. We're using the power we have to make the difference we can. Lead and propose, not wait and oppose. Earlier, I mentioned the thousands of public employees being laid off. Behind each of these numbers is a person, and I want to close with a story of one of them. On May 24th, Beth Eckerd, a paraprofessional in northern Delaware, one of 43 teaching assistants notified that she may not have a job this fall, stood up in front of a school board, her school board, to read a letter. Ironically, this happened to be one of 2 states to win millions of dollars in Race to the Top funds. Her letter wasn't addressed to board members. It was to her students, and I want to share part of it. Dear friends, I am sorry to tell you that I will no longer be here every day to help you. I am sad I won't be there every morning as you arrive to greet you with a hug and a smile, to tell you how happy I am to see you, how each one of you is so special, and to help you start your day. Next year, there won't be enough people in the hallways waiting for you. You will be on your own. To my friend who could not even write your name when you came to school, I worked with you every day, all year, and now you are reading first-grade books. When you struggle next year, I am sorry, but no one will have the time to be there to help you. You are on your own. To each of you who I loved and cared for every day, thank you. I'm so very grateful for the opportunity to have helped you learn and grow. I love all of you, and I will miss you terribly. But I am sorry. It has been decided I am not an important or necessary part of your lives and your education anymore. My dear friends, I am so very sorry. You are on your own. With much love, your friend, Mrs. Eckert. Beth Eckert is exactly the type of public servant our children need. Patient, skillful, dedicated. When I look out at all of you, and I think about all those we represent, we know that if we are to ensure that children are not left to fend for themselves, dedicated public employees like Beth Eckert can't be left to fend for themselves either. That's why we stand together for each other and for America's working people, their families, and their children. So today, let me leave you where I began, horrified at what many of us are going through, but hopeful nonetheless. Hopeful because no one else does what we do, rain or shine, good economy or bad. Educate all children, pre-K to 16, tend to the sick, and serve a nation. Hopeful because we're going to make common cause with community. Hopeful because we know that we have the ideas that will advance public education as it ought to be. Hopeful that together we will mobilize a nation to adopt and embrace those ideas. Hopeful because there are people like Beth Eckert and all of you who go beyond the amazing work you do individually to work through your union to have an even greater impact on the greater good. Yes, these are tough times, but unions were born of tough times, and we were built for tough times. The strength and solidarity on display in Central Falls shows what we can accomplish when we work together. Times such as these remind us of who we are and of what we can and must accomplish. We don't give up on our kids, and we won't give up on our communities to fight for what is right. Our students need us to be united, and our communities need us to be strong. And in saving our schools, we will be saving America and the most important public institutions on which our nation relies. My friends, your work is vital, your cause is great, and your honor is unbound. I am proud to stand with you. Thank you.